What about things like Sodom and Gomorrah?
Sodom and Gomorrah. That is one of the most sensational stories.
Sum it up for those
recent
who are
history.
not as aware as they should be.
Yes. Okay. I mean, so Sodom and Gomorrah, it looks like one of those mythological stories out of the Bible, right? Oh yeah, sure. Fire comes from heaven. Yeah. Tell me another one. And I'll be honest with you, Matt. When I was growing up and reading.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Heart of David. I covered this story, and but when I did it, I didn't have any editing at all and stuff like that. So I decided that I would recover this because it's very interesting. It's a good story because it goes more towards the proof of that it's real for various different reasons. And I think this will interest you. But before I get to this, I'll just let you know I have a lot of pain in my neck. I have a pinched neck nerve, so I'm not very well. I don't know about you, but nerve pain is one of the worst pains you could deal with. I just wanted to address something because I think it is important to my channel, and then I'll get right to this. I go through my comments sometimes. I may look at my comments and then, react to them or whatever every couple of days or something. But I do look at comments and stuff. And so I just saw one, and I read it in its full. And it's, it said something to the effect of, being legalistic. The person wasn't calling me legalistic, but in all respect, if watching this video, I get where you're coming from, and it was about what I think. You can go back to the video, and you might see this through a lot of my videos, but legalistic in the sense that what I believe you can see. I'm not saying in every circumstance, but what a Christian should look like. Like, are you actually able to see physically? And I believe in many cases you can. And that may not be it may be things you see in their life and that type of stuff, but I just have to make this very clear. We live in a time where I believe it's complete apostasy. We're living in a time of just horrific apostasy. You know it as much as I do. If you have access to the internet, you understand. You can see it throughout so many of the churches throughout North America and Africa. My answer, okay, so I'll give you an example of something that I said. If you have problems, if you have sexual sins, those things, the wages of sin is death. It is. It may not be that sin that you're dealing with in that moment, but as I said, it could be the 15th one from then, right? See, what if it's porn? Porn may lead to you going to a strip club, and say maybe even have unprotected sex, getting AIDS, getting shot, getting whatever, robbed. I would rather be, me pointing out stuff like, if you're looking at a woman, like Jesus said, but I say to you, if you look at a woman with lust, you already committed fornication with her in your heart, okay? The life that I lived, go look back in my videos and look back to I Shouldn't Be Alive Part 1 and go through Part 1 to 4, and you'll understand why I am the way I am. I believe we're saved by grace through faith, and I don't believe works save us, okay? I don't believe that. But it's quite evident in about 4 or 5 areas of the Bible that God will judge us for the works that we have done in our lives. But no, that doesn't save us. And we don't have to be this legalistic Christian to be saved. So when it came to the woman, okay, this is what I said. If you have problems with certain things, let's say it's on the internet, shut the internet off. Why is that so hard? If you like, okay, for me, this is how I trained myself, okay? Because I had sexual issues, porn issues. And I think probably about 50% of people who are watching my videos can understand the same thing. Seeing as how like 60% of the internet people go to porn, okay? So, I was hardly alone. I don't do that. I haven't done that in a very long time. I trained myself that when I go out, say I go to the grocery store, I see a very pretty woman. I may look twice, but I've trained myself just to turn my head. You can call that legalistic, but you obviously didn't lead the life that I led. And so that's just what I wanted to reply to that. It's what if it was you had a problem with drugs? What I just explained to you is no different than making sure you don't go around where you can get drugs. I understand where the person's coming from. And it's always a push-pull thing with this is like one of the splits I see happening. You're legalistic. Well, you're too much grace. I believe in the 10 Commandments. I believe they were never void. I believe they keep us well. If the 10 Commandments didn't exist, there'd be so much chaos, none of us would be alive. So, everyone has their styles. I have my relationship with God. I have a good relationship with God. I wouldn't be alive without God. And I understand those principles. Discipline, all these different things. People look at that and they're like, oh, no, I couldn't have that. But you know what? Some Christians can. Some Christians live by it and do very well. And I would rather be that way anyways. I have 13 pain disorders, and that's why I have a lot of discipline. It's not the only reason, but I wanted to make that. I just wanted to say that it's hard to deal with that balance there. People think you don't have a relationship with God, otherwise you're just. What I'm trying to do is save people from sinning that leads to death. And if you can't understand that, I don't know how to explain properly. So let's get into this. So this is Sodom discovered by archaeologists with John Bergsma. Very interesting. Let's go ahead.
Reading Genesis 19 and stuff like that. It was a challenge to my faith. I'm like, okay, come on, really? This really happened? Or are we supposed to understand this? Something else. But, several years ago now, maybe like 15 years ago, I was at the Society of Biblical Literature, which was being held in that year in San Francisco. And I was in one of these, conference rooms, and I just wandered into this session because it had an intriguing title, something about archaeological discoveries at Tel El Hammam in Jordan. I thought, well, I'll walk into this, because a lot of these conferences at the Society of Biblical Literature, like these ideologically driven, post-colonial, feminist, whatever, interpretation of this, that, or the other thing. So I like to go to ones that are actually about language or history or something. Somebody actually dug something up and we're talking about data, So this archaeological session I wander in, I start listening, and as I'm listening to this presentation for about 45 minutes, near the end of it, I began to realize, oh my gosh, these people presenting think that they have found the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what they're saying in a really roundabout, really understated way. So at the end of the presentation, they stop the presentation and they open up for questions, and they describe these 2 city mounds that they had found on the Jordanian side of the Jordan River. and in this destruction layer and so on. And so I raised my hand immediately and I said, well, did you find any arrowheads? The reason I asked that, Matt, is when you have a destruction layer of an ancient city, if you find arrowheads in the destruction layer, it means that an army caused the destruction and they were shooting arrows at the defenders and blah, 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 blah. If you find a destruction layer...
So that's very important to know when you do a dig like that, if that's what they're inferring.
And there aren't arrowheads, that means an army did not destroy the city, and then probably it was some kind of natural event, right? So I'm curious, like, what destroyed these two cities that you guys think are Sodom and Gomorrah? And so the researcher starts to get very bashful when I ask this question.
So they found two, they're saying it's Sodom and Gomorrah. They're finding these big mounds. So it's getting interesting because he's saying that there's no arrowheads. So more likely than not, it would point to, some type of natural disaster, probably by a lot of things that they find all over the earth, right? Most likely.
He says, well, I didn't really want to go there, but all I want to say while we're recording this session is that it was a heat event. And there's like 20 other people in the room, and we're looking at each other like, a heat event? Like, is that like a wardrobe malfunction? Like, what is a heat event? Like, okay. And then he stopped the recording, and like the official session was over, and so it was like off camera at this point. So all of us in the room, like, mobbed the guy at the front, like, okay, tell us what's going on. And so this researcher, Stephen Collins he's from a southwestern university in the U.S. here, he says, okay, so we get down to this destruction layer of this city that we're beginning to think is Sodom, and we pulled up a piece of pottery, and when I looked on one side of it, I thought, oh no, our research is ruined, because I saw that it was glazed. And glazing wasn't invented until the Ottoman period, or at least the kind of glazing that he thought he saw. And the Ottoman period is like 1000 AD. And if you're pulling that up, that means you've got contamination in your archaeological dig. You got like later artifacts down there. But then he turned the pottery over, and on the back of it, it was typical Bronze Age pottery, but it was glazed on one side and not on the other. Like, what on earth is going on? So make a long story short, he sends this away to a lab in the U.S. and for testing, and they come back and say, well, that glazing is Trinitite. Okay, great. What's Trinitite? Well, Trinitite is that glass layer that you get when you basically set off an atomic bomb in the desert, and it melts the glass, and you get a kind of crystalline formation that's called Trinitite. So this pottery was raised to over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Can you imagine that at that point, being an archaeologist? Especially if you, I don't know how many people on the site would know their Bibles, but who knows in Jordan, right? That's crazy. And before I let this go on, I had heard on, like many years ago, places that were found, I think it was actually Scotland, that had a place where it was Trinitite as well. And we're not talking about small areas of land either. We're talking about like fields worth of, like, it looked like an atomic bomb went off like thousands of years ago. So it's looking pretty in favor, isn't it? Isn't it?
For a brief moment of time. Like, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. So they continue to bring up this glazed pottery, and eventually what they discover is, among other things, they also begin to find human remains. They find human skeletons that are complete up until about halfway up the backbone, and then there's just a scorch mark, and there's nothing on the top of the body. And they find the skeleton behind a wall that's about, 4 feet high. So what's going on here? Well, long story short, they find massive evidence that a huge heat blast from the sky at about 25 degrees above the horizon incinerated these twin cities on the Jordanian side of the river, just north of the Dead Sea. Yeah, and they have the artifacts to prove it.
And again, the reason it has to be from the sky.
What's that?
Wow,
The
man.
reason it had.
That's quite a big claim. They're not talking about one small site, are they? They're talking about two large areas. And Sodom and Gomorrah were, I believe, trading cities. I don't think people know a lot about them, but they were like, significant centers for trading. I don't know. Would they be like a port city? But obviously they're finding enough bodies to study them. Charred bodies. Let's keep listening.
To be from above?
Because of the angle, like they have these human remains that apparently were standing upright behind a wall, and everything above the wall was incinerated, and they do like the angular calculations, and they can see, that blast was coming like this, so they can calculate the angle at which, and the stuff when they find the stuff in situ, and they've got a scorched side or a melted side, again they can triangulate where this is coming from. And so long story short, from a natural material.
So scientifically, easily, it wouldn't even take a scientist, right? It would just take simple mathematics, like to do, what did you say? They found them behind a wall. Obviously they're finding other people, but if you have a person standing up, they can calculate by the burn marks on the body at what angle it came down. Who knows, maybe even at what speed. But obviously they can calculate how whatever caused Trinitite, think about this, whatever caused that Trinitite to form, which the only thing we know can do that is an atomic blast, didn't happen on the ground. It happened from the sky. Something from the sky, based on those skeletons, by the angle of the burn marks on the body, the charcoal body. That is crazy. That's why you walk into the Bible, for me, okay, with faith. Because if you don't, you're not going to believe these stories like Noah's Ark and all this type of stuff. It's just what I think.
Material explanation, this looks like a meteor blast,
That's what I was about to ask. What was the naturalistic explanation?
Like in Tunguska, I think it was called Siberia back in the 1800s, there was this, massive meteor blast that flattened, several hundred square miles of taiga, of, northern Russian forest and so on. And, when a meteor comes into the atmosphere, it heats up and then explodes, and it can be like an atomic blast. But again, the timing and the location and the cities all track with what is described.
Yep, so someone else might say, hey, look at Tunguska, right? That was in Siberia. I think he said, what was that, 1863 or something like that? It just flattened a huge area of forest. And I don't know if it did the Trinitite like he's saying, but someone might say, well, it could just be a meteorite. But look at the information they have. They're in the spots where they think Sodom and Gomorrah is. Let's keep listening.
Described of Abraham and Lot in Genesis 19 and the surrounding chapters. And then the Bible talks a lot about Sodom and Gomorrah for centuries thereafter, all the way into the prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah continue to mention Sodom and Gomorrah. This stuck in the cultural memory because this was a major world historical traumatic event for us, like the two towers going down, like this major disaster where these two cities were entirely wiped out by a heat blast from the sky.
God wanted
the
us,
hand of God, as it were,
to be a byword.
But no historical source records this, even even though Sodom and Gomorrah were arguably the two most powerful cities in that entire region, they were at a trade route, from going from east to the west, from Egypt out to, the Far East, and everything was passing through there. So very powerful, very wealthy cities. And only the biblical record, has a historical account of this, meteorological, geological event that we can now attest that tracks with the time period and the description. And also that blast going up creates a great vacuum, which then recollapses and pulls all kinds of salt sediment from the Dead Sea and then slams it on that location that was in the bullseye of, and that's where you get, the discussion of, became a pillar of salt and all the hellfire, the brimstone, that was all torn up by the blast and redeposited over the cities. So it's absolutely fascinating. And folks can look.
What he's not saying, and you can look up YouTube videos, by the way, look up Sodom and Gomorrah, look up sulfur balls in those areas that they found all that stuff. So many people visit this area, and they're probably there before that, obviously, right? There are sulfur balls all over the area, and you can take them. Like, you can find these sulfur balls, and you can take a match and a lighter and light it, and I think it does this weird reaction. But it's exactly what it's supposed to be. So
this up. I'm not making this up. Steve Collins, a very reputable archaeologist from something like Southwestern Methodist University or something like this. You can look online. Just go to Amazon and type in the discovery of Sodom and Gomorrah in his book. I forget the exact title.
Thursday's on it.
But you can find it and put a link to it.
Wow.
And that really changed my perspective on the Old Testament, Matt, because what it pointed out to me is things that sounded too outlandish to be history that even I as a believer was attempted to discount, suddenly and sensationally shown to be, actually that's a historical event.
Now, do you think it was a meteor? Do you think that a Christian can say it was a meteor and it's God using the meteor to...
Absolutely.
I see.
I
could be anything.
The providence is in the timing. I mean, that's the timing of God. It's like
if you're a sinner and you walk into a church and get struck by lightning.
Right. Oh, that was just a naturalist explanation. No, these things are in the hands of God.
Wow.
So I don't see any conflict.
Another big thing that has people have talked about lately is Noah's Ark and Mount Ararat and stuff like that. And there was a guy who went into Turkey. Now, don't get me on the details of this because I haven't looked at it for a long time. But it was a man on a search. That's what he did. I don't know. I think he quit his job and even left his family. Not left, but to go and search for Noah's Ark because, I believe it was a satellite revealed that there was, by measurement, there was the exact 300 cubits. And there was something else to that too. But he went there and the Turkish authorities or someone there arrested him and didn't let him dig. But I hear, they're doing digs. It's too bad that they just, they don't do a dig. A country just doesn't say, okay, let's just get right to this. But,